This week, Jimmy Vo from Datadog is with us to discuss detection engineering. Then Brian Peterson from ICS4ICS joins us to talk about helping industrial organizations respond to incidents. Finally, in the enterprise security news, eSentire raises $325 million as it expands into services. Beyond Identity raises $100 million to build out MFA. SecureFrame raises $56 million to help folks with SOC 2 and HIPAA compliance. Nashville-based Phosphorus Cybersecurity raises $38 million to secure IoT devices. Anecdotes raises a $25 million Series A to compete in the same space as SecureFrame. Lots of money for folks that ease compliance pains here this week. Cloudflare acquires Area 1 Security. Darktrace acquires Cybersprint. Sneak acquires Fugue. Andy Ellis drops an S-bomb in his latest opinion piece, the latest of several entertaining and thought-provoking hot takes from him. And CISA publishes a list of free tools and services. All that and more on this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.
This is Security Weekly, for security professionals, by security professionals. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where we talk security vendors and aren't afraid to name names. It's Enterprise Security Weekly. Workloads protected by VMware are the safest workloads in the multi-cloud. Private cloud, public cloud, any cloud. Stronger, with distributed protection to the API and everything east-west, inside, and cross-cloud. Stronger, with 3 layers of detection, trusting nothing and seeing everything, even the best hidden bad actors. Stronger, with an SE Labs AAA certified advanced NDR that brings the multi-cloud together for the win. You've got workloads, we've got security. VMware Security. Simply stronger. Visit securityweekly.com/VMware to learn more. CyberGRX brings a revolutionary approach to third-party cyber risk management. Using sophisticated data analytics, real-world attack scenarios, and real-time threat intelligence, CyberGRX provides a complete portfolio analysis of a company's third-party ecosystem, helping the world's leading businesses prioritize their risks and make smart decisions. Interested in learning more? Head over to securityweekly.com/CyberGRX and demo the world's biggest third-party exchange.
Welcome to Enterprise Security Weekly and happy World Bartender Day. This is episode 262, recorded on Thursday, February 24th, 2022. I'm your host, Adrian Sanabria, and joining me today is Mr. Tyler Shields. How are you, Tyler?
Good, Adrian. I'm doing well. Have you ever wanted to be a flair bartender?
A flair bartender? It would be tough for me to be a normal bartender. I'd set the goal there before I'd move to sliding around in socks and flipping things.
Every time I see one of those flair bartenders flipping the cups and flames shooting out and stuff, I always think to myself, that would be the coolest job ever.
It would be. It's so much practice, though. And they drop things occasionally. It has to happen.
By occasionally, probably like all the time. But you only see the good ones. You only see the good results.
Right. Yeah, no, I would love to do that stuff. As a kid and even as an adult, like I'm constantly trying to like toss something behind my back and catch it on the other side and flip things around. Like that was constantly me. So maybe, I don't know. Maybe I can still aspire to be one.
You'd be a natural, man.
How about you? Any bartending in your history?
A lot of illegal bartending, but nothing where I got paid. No.
Too bad.
I wish.
Also joining us today is Katie Tytler. How are you, Katie?
I'm well. Happy World Bartender Day.
The same to you. It's I don't really have anything prepared for that today, except tip your bartenders, treat them well, and they will treat you well and kind. Definitely good for them to have a day. It can be a rough gig. It's I can't imagine I imagine it's different depending on where you're bartending. If you're bartending at the bar at a hotel in a small town or something like that, completely different than like a trendy bar in New York City or something like that. I can only imagine the things they have heard and seen.
Or better yet.
Although I imagine that every night it starts out a little better than it ends up.
A little better? Again, I think that depends on where you're at.
Or better yet, I would like to be a bartender at a beach bungalow bar on the beach.
That'd be nice.
That would be.
That'd be nice. Some of the people I know have some amazing bars put in their house. Somebody I know, at least you and me know, Tyler, just had like an actual restaurant bar, like an antique one, like installed into their home.
Maybe someday.
Like one that came out of an actual bar. Yeah. Amazing. And it's not just a bar surface. It's like a whole canopy and everything. It's amazing. Anyway, on we go. Let's see. We have one announcement here. We have a couple webcasts coming up soon. First, join us March 2nd to learn 5 things you can do to catch more bad guys. Live attendees will have the chance to win a $100 gift card to Hacker Warehouse. Then, join us March 10th for an intro to KQL queries. Register for these webcasts at securityweekly.com/webcast. And don't forget to check out our library of on-demand webcasts and technical trainings at securityweekly.com/on-demand. And that should be /webcasts, plural. Should be an S on the end of there. All right. Our first interview today, the topic is detection engineering in the age of cloud. We're excited to have Jimmy Vo, detection engineer at Datadog, with us today. Jimmy builds detections for Datadog's cloud security platform. So not the behind-the-scenes piece, the customer-facing piece, because I understand they have both of those roles. He has a background in threat detection and response, SIM engineering, threat hunting, threat intel, and threatening people in general on jiu-jitsu mats. He is also a deck master. No, not the wooden type, not the magic, not the card building Magic the Gathering type, the other kind. Welcome, Jimmy.
Hey, good to be here. I would be a terrible bartender, though. I was thinking about this, and I have a terrible memory, so I'd screw up probably every order.
Yeah, I've been coming here every night for a week, Jimmy. Why can you not remember my drink? What's the deal here?
Especially when your drink is a gin and tonic.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's not something. Doesn't sound like a Starbucks order. Yeah, I'm sure bartenders get those as well. Yeah.
I went to Starbucks yesterday and ordered a skinny latte, and the barista there asked me what skinny meant.
What? At a Starbucks?
Wow. Yeah.
Pretty much you fail. I'm pretty sure you fail training if you can't figure that out.
I still got what I wanted, but I did in fact have to explain to her what skinny was. And I apologized. I said I thought I was using Starbucks language instead of Dunkin' Donuts language. So
you guys taught me to say it this way, not the other way around.
Right, exactly.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh, all right. So Jimmy, we've known each other for a while. Jimmy is one of the many friends that I've made over the years in InfoSec that I don't think I've ever met in person. You know, we've met each other on Twitter. And when we were prepping for this call, we were talking about how odd that is. I've actually had friends for over a decade in InfoSec who got cancer and no longer are with us, and I've never met in person. And it's it's crazy to me. And I now have this deep desire to meet everybody in person. Especially with the pandemic and everything. But I don't know, Jimmy, if you remember how we got acquainted online, but it was Guillaume Ross who made me put in that bit about building decks.
Yeah, and he made sure that I talked about building decks and whatnot. But yeah, I don't remember, because I remember like it was like 2010, and I wanted to break into security. I was a computer science student doing IT, and I was like, I gotta follow all these security people on Twitter because that's where everyone was. So I probably said some dumb shit to you on Twitter, and you were all about it, and we became best friends.
Yeah. Yeah, and Twitter was, it was just Twitter was new at the time. I think InfoSec was new, so it was just that combination seemed to work out pretty well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your background is in very large enterprise. On the financial side, I believe you were at Bank of America for a while, right?
Yeah. So I was a large bank. I did technical threat intelligence for them. So I covered, all the fun foreign intelligence groups, and then I did threat hunting. So on the other side, as the consumer of intel, to do hypothesis-based threat hunting. So that was really fun in a large enterprise.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of what we want to focus on today. I imagine a lot of folks who've been in the industry for a while are having this kind of this holy crap moment as they move from more traditional environments to cloud first environments, or at least if not cloud first, companies that have embraced the cloud and DevOps and all this stuff. And really excited to have you on, because I imagine that's still fresh in your mind, like you're still learning a lot of new stuff every day. So maybe talk a bit about kind of the I don't know if you call that tech shock, culture shock, as you move from one environment to the other.
Yeah, it's a totally different. It was kind of foreign, because I think, at least in my experience, most of reacting to alerts or threat hunting or whatever is in Windows workstations, and when you have to adapt the cloud concepts, a lot of things are significantly different. Like, we're very focused on the actual workloads and not user endpoints. So kind of wrapping my brain around all that. And I mean, I don't even have much of a developer background. Like, I've never deployed code. So I had to kind of wrap my brain around all these concepts of, continuous deployment, continuous integration. Like, I can't even spell Kubernetes still, and containerization and microservices and all these terms that came out of the whole DevOps movement.
Yeah, and I understand Datadog. So for them, like, some of this is new to them as well. They didn't always have a security product.
Yep, security product.
Some people may not even know that they do.
Yeah. I didn't even know. Like, when I was looking for my next move to leave the enterprise, I had no idea Datadog was in the security space, and I think we're still working on branding ourselves in the security space. But yeah, it's interesting. The products are young. We have really cool data, and one of the big drivers was this was a way for me to understand what cloud native environments look like.
Yeah, so I guess maybe talk a little bit about the the product that you do detection engineering for. What kind of product that is.
Yeah, so our team works there. I specifically work on our Cloud SIEM product. So I write out of the box detections for our Cloud SIEM, so they get pushed to all the customers, and it's a little bit different because we're not an MDR, so I'm not doing very specific detections for a specific customer.
Okay. Yeah. They have to be general, across the whole breadth of your customers. And I found that interesting because it's a trend we've seen actually with products labeled as XDR. One of the keys there, or one of the selling points, the big value prop is we've got detection engineers that'll figure out how to build these things for you, so you don't have to at least have as many. If I'm not sure if you can get away with no detection engineers at all. It depends on what your goals are and how big your team is, how big your company is. But at least to some extent, I think it's kind of cool having a research team in there building stuff. So I imagine a lot of stuff you build. How much of it is proactive versus reactive? Like how much of your work comes from what's going on in the news, like new vulnerabilities or exploits coming out, or hearing about new techniques and stuff like that?
I would say it's a mixture. Sometimes we have to work on detections with new integrations because a big value prop of Datadog is a bunch of integrations. So if we get logs from a new integration, we'll have to write some detections around the new log source. But sometimes it is reacting to whatever's happening in the news. Like how can we detect post-exploitation activity if someone exploits log for shell or whatever. And another piece is just exploratory. Like we will have a theme and maybe deploy whatever AWS enumeration tool in the AWS sandbox and see what kind of CloudTrail logs are generated and try to write detections and see see how well they perform.
So do your customers, just for context, I imagine you have a mix of people with traditional environments versus cloud-focused environments. Would that be accurate, or is it mostly DevOps, cloudy type setups that customers have?
I have no idea, actually. I have no idea. I would assume most of them. I would say most of them use cloud platforms for sure, but I have no idea what the breakdown is because when we're doing research, we don't see that context about the actual customer.
Right. Yeah, it makes sense. So yeah, it's I find it is interesting that you're doing this for customers, and then Datadog has their own detection engineering team, right? So that I imagine it is a bit different doing it for the outside.
For the customer there's a lot of challenges, I think. I mean, you see it all the time. These vendors promise these magical rules that'll detect APT with no false positives, and we're continuously trying to figure out how to deliver high value but generic detections, and that's very challenging because every environment's different. Like, if I were building very high fidelity detections for my organization, I can get really granular, but I don't have that luxury when I'm shipping stuff out of the box.
So I have a quick question for you. When we talk about what it takes to do your role, the role you have at Datadog, I imagine there's a wide variety of different backgrounds. Can you give me a little bit of, is there different backgrounds in the team that does what you're doing in the creation of these detections? The reason why I think there might be is that, there has to be lots of different, I guess, experiences to be able to write the ultimate detections. Can you maybe clarify, or does everybody come from a similar background in your role?
I think so. The biggest challenge is, I mean, I don't know what I don't know how big the talent pool is of threat detection and response people in cloud native environments, but like a lot of my team came from, defending the traditional Windows kind of shop that has not been in the cloud. And now we're starting to find some people who have some cloud native experience. So it's I think I think a lot of the detection engineers have a similar background as I do. But that's starting to change as we are continuing to build a team out.
Yeah, and that was something I was going to bring up, because I don't know if you have any open positions right now, but it does sound like you're hiring pretty frequently.
Yeah. We're always hiring. We're hiring security researchers, but I think fortunately for us who did not get born in the cloud, we do understand adversary TTPs, and granted, they change a little bit when you're attacking, cloud native environments, but I think the mental model is still there. So some of it is transferable, but I've had to spend a lot of time just learning like what the DevOps methodology is, and that's something we have to do when we hire someone that does not have cloud native experience.
And how do you get that experience? Do you build stuff in a lab? Do you play with it yourself, or are you kind of looking over the shoulders of other folks at Datadog?
It's all the above. We have I use a Cloud Guru. It's amazing because they have labs. We have access to sandboxes. So another thing is just experimenting. We have our internal security team, which we can always ask them questions, and we have a ton of engineers. So asking questions and that stuff. But yeah, it's all the above.
Yeah, I've heard great stuff about a Cloud Guru before, and I was just making a note for myself here to check them out because the next role that I'm going into is actually going to be pretty cloud heavy as well. So I'm going to be in your shoes doing some of what you've been doing. How long have you been there?
Just over a year.
Okay.
So I still am trying to figure out all this cloud native stuff, but I definitely learned a ton within a year. And again, that was one of the reasons why I joined Datadog to kind of get in front of this trend as people are starting to migrate to the cloud, and more companies, all these startups that start on AWS or Azure or GCP, they're gonna need this expertise. And I don't know if it's gonna be hard to find people who can do detection and response in cloud native environments, but I'm betting it's going to be a challenge because it's a challenge to get security professionals in enterprises, I would think.
Yeah, no, it is. And I think that's a constant battle and discussion going on right now. Like it seems like everybody wants someone that fits the role already, but nobody's willing to contribute to building that talent pipeline that gets people to that point, to where, like I've got a couple of mentees that were complaining to me, basically saying, like, all the gigs out there are for people with 3 to 5 years of experience. And they're asking me, there's like, where do I get that first 3 to 5 years? Like, where am I going to get that if nobody's hiring, to train us to do that? And my suggestion has just been to, instead of trying to jump into security directly, maybe try and go in on the IT side. But I do know that some people are coming straight out of school and boot camps and getting certifications and stuff like that, and going into security. I saw that you recently hired Darwin Salazar, who was on the podcast recently.
Yep. Yeah, he was actually one of the rare candidates that actually had listed CSPM in his resume. So cloud security posture management. I don't know anything about this space. That's the industry term though, right?
Yep. Yeah, that is kind of the roll-up platform that everything is going into. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're starting to find people. They're there. It's just about. I think one of the things that needs to happen is people need to know that our team exists too, and like we have a great recruiting marketing team that kind of puts the word out there. And it's interesting to see this skill shift happen. And fortunately, you can like, if you're a student, I think you can get an Azure account for free. It's a little bit better than the free tier. You get like 100 credits a year, and you can go build stuff. Like you can, on your own, go deploy some apps using Azure DevOps, like enable logging, send the logs to Log Analytics, and see what you can kind of observe. So I think it's an exciting time, and we have all these people putting out tons of free content. So I'm excited that all this is happening for sure.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming. We had it was last year we had a did a piece specifically on breaking into security, and there's so many resources that we ended up just putting together like a PDF handout, of all the and even that handout was just like the top resources that we'd recommend, without overwhelming people. So that's certainly something that I don't think was around 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's nice that that's there now. So as we wrap up here, what are you looking for somebody on your team? Like are you willing to train people up? Like do you guys have a program for bringing in junior people or interns or something like that?
Yeah. So we're committed to developing our pipeline for non-senior detection engineers. We have I'm kind of helping with that initiative. So like, let's say there's someone who has worked in the SOC for a year and they want to get into, threat detection in the cloud. We'll hire them and we'll train them on and give them the space and time. That's the important thing, because I remember as a new hire, because I was the first Datadog detection engineer, and I was like, no, I don't even really know what I'm doing, and I had all this pressure to ship rules. And Datadog was so patient with me before I started like cutting PRs and merging rules into the code base. And like even worse is like I've never used Git in that context before Datadog. Like I've cloned stuff, but like I was like I had my, you have your first merge conflict and you cry yourself to sleep for 3 days.
Yeah, trial by fire. Absolutely. Yeah. That's the best way to learn, though, because, you learn that stuff for life when you learn it under pressure, I think, at least in my experience. Yeah.
And we're trying to figure out, and I think every organization should figure this out, but like, how do we train up a junior person, especially a person who comes from a different background? Maybe they were hit hard by COVID. They're working 3 jobs to kind of pay their bills, and they're like, "Oh, this security thing is really cool," and they go learn a bunch of stuff. How do I hire those people with the hustle and the drive? And that's sort of where I want to get to. And I think all organizations should look into that strategy, because I'm still a big believer in aptitude. But that's just my opinion.
Absolutely, like having that that passion to learn and that hunger can almost be more important, because you can't give that to somebody. Like you can throw stuff. You can educate those people. You can ask them to learn something, and they'll go and do it. But somebody with maybe a little bit of experience or even a lot of experience, sometimes aren't as viable. So where should somebody go if they want to work at Datadog? Should they get in contact with you, or is there what's a good resource for getting started?
So all of our jobs are listed on our website, datadogshq.com/careers, and all our recs are under engineering. And I think our recs are written very nicely, because we don't say you need 25 years of Kubernetes experience and crazy stuff like that, and you need a PhD. We kind of set what you'll do and what we sort of want you to have experience wise, and we kind of assess the applicants, and we can decide if they're like, are they senior, are they junior, are they in the middle? So yeah, they're posted. Like I would recommend, if anyone's interested, just apply, even if you don't hit any of the if you don't hit all the requirements. Like I I kind of look back on some of when they post like my previous jobs, like I would not even be qualified for that rec. So just apply.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most valuable lessons I ever learned from my father was that a job rec is more of a wish list. And I never looked at it that way until he said that. And then I, obviously, once I'd been on the other side, I realized, yeah, absolutely. I know I'm never going to find anybody with all the things that I put on this job rec.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. So I posted that link to the Datadog careers page on the Discord. So if you're on the Discord, go check it out there. Pretty easy to find on your own. Otherwise, though, Google datadoghq.com/careers. And Jimmy, thank you very much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And stay tuned. When we come back, we're going to talk ICS incident response with Brian Peterson from ICS4ICS.
Endpoint security is designed to protect every device in your fleet, wherever it may be. These days, that can be a lot of different places. Find out how HP Wolf Security uses emerging strategies like application isolation, along with a zero-trust approach and framework to give you a powerful, manageable, usable solution to your growing and increasingly spread-out security challenges. Learn how HP Wolf Security can make a difference across your endpoints at securityweekly.com/HP Wolf. Attacks can't be prevented, but they can be stopped. Modern cyber attackers have already made it inside your network, but you have the upper hand. Find and eradicate threats with ExtraHop network detection and response, and shut them out before real damage is done. Learn the advanced techniques attackers are using and how ExtraHop stops them with a live attack simulation. Register at securityweekly.com/ExtraHop. That's extra HOP.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Do you have a specific guest or topic that you want us to cover on one of the shows? Submit your suggestions for guests by visiting securityweekly.com/guests and completing the form. We review these suggestions monthly and we'll reach out to you once reviewed. All right, for our interview today, Brian Peterson joins us to talk about helping companies better manage industrial cyber incidents. Mr. Peterson has 30 years of cybersecurity experience in IT systems, applications, SCADA systems, such as those used in oil and gas and manufacturing sectors. And in the last 20 years, he's concentrated on building cybersecurity programs, incident management capabilities, and other processes related to security. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Great. Thank you, Adrian.
Yeah, so it's quite a background. Yeah, I'm sure you've seen some things in both the IT and security side. Having that kind of breadth of history to bring to it.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I spent 31 years working for oil company, and I continue to work with them as a contractor. But yeah, it's been very interesting. I've traveled to 60 countries in the world doing various cybersecurity and compliance consulting work and operations. It's been a lot of fun.
So, I'm curious to get your opinion on where having, been able to zoom out over all that time, especially in a field that we typically think of as being kind of behind the ball in some ways with security, just because the technology in that sector doesn't change out and move at the same pace as other sectors. So I'm curious what your view is, like how things are moving, like if particularly the ICS, SCADA, the industrial side of things, if they're keeping up or if they've got a long way to go. Like what's your general outlook, I think, for that industry?
Yeah, I think it's great. So the oil and gas industry started a consortium called LOGIIC, which is linking the oil and gas industry to improve cybersecurity, along with partnering with DHS, the Science and Technology Directorate, 15 years ago. We were the first public-private partnership and very successful. So we still do that today. I still work for that consortium. And the oil and gas companies are investing heavily in cybersecurity, particularly as it pertains to industrial control systems. They're very high risk kind of applications that could cause a lot of risks and problems to the environments we work in, safety, health. And so they have invested and they continue to invest. And we work on some very interesting cutting edge cybersecurity projects, which ultimately the members take back to their companies and they deploy those solutions.
Yeah. So, okay. So for a while, it sounds like you may even have a leg up over other industries, at least in organizing and planning this stuff out. So the, ICS4ICS, it sounds like this is a program managed by someone. It's not a company that you work for. And the acronym, you've got two different ICSs, which is kind of clever for the people listening. It's ICS, the number 4, and then ICS. And it looks like the first ICS stands for Incident Command System. And then the second ICS is the one we're more familiar with, right? The Industrial Control Systems.
Yeah. 2 years ago, Megan Sanford from Schneider thought up this idea. and presented at S4. We're doing a exercise this year, April 18th, which is free at S4 on ICS4ICS. And so ISAGCA, the Global Cybersecurity Alliance, which is led by Andre Ristano, picked up the ball, and Megan's still heavily involved to ensure that the program gets care and feeding. We have lots of volunteers. We have 1,000 people on our distribution list, and probably a few hundred of them actually participate in shaping the whole program. And so the program is really designed to ensure that companies are ready to deal with the cybersecurity threats that are going to impact their operations. Industrial control systems are used to support various aspects of our daily life and the security of our country. So, the stoplights, the trains, your electricity in your house, water, all of these things rely on industrial control systems. So the ICS4ICS is designed to ensure that companies can quickly respond to an incident that would disrupt their operations. And potentially in the future, we could see disruption across an entire region or even across the globe. We all use a lot of the same systems as you have discussed in previous of your conversations, and that means they're all vulnerable. And so we're trying to put together a program. DHS CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, is involved heavily with this and has been involved from the beginning. We've used a lot of materials from FEMA. So we're working closely with the U.S. government, and our 1,000 volunteers around the world are engaging their equivalent government agencies to also get involved. So we're going to be doing exercises throughout the world after our exercise on April 18th. And we hope to get people to develop the capabilities in their companies so they can quickly respond and resolve the issue and get our critical infrastructure working again.
Yeah. And, I think that's something that companies in general need to do more, is putting on actual simulations and practicing, some of these tools and techniques and their workbooks for both responding and recovering. Now this, you mentioned S4, which, this is not my world. I don't know the ICS SCADA world terribly well, but I do have some friends there, and I've heard them say a lot of good things about S4. And I understand it's, I don't know if it's the biggest conference of that kind in that part of the industry, but it happens in Florida every year. Is that correct?
Yes, it does normally. It didn't happen last year because of the pandemic, but yeah, it's very successful, widely attended, representation by everyone around the world comes to this conference who's involved in industrial control system cybersecurity. It's a great conference, and so we're hosting an exercise, 3-hour exercise on the Monday preceding the event, and have quite a few people attending.
And the results of that event, is that going to be public? Is that going to be shared publicly, or just with members of the ICS4ICS program?
Yeah, everything we do is free. And so we're going to record. We have 2 video guys coming recording the exercise, and we're going to publish it by May 1st. All the materials that we've developed, which are based on FEMA and DHS's materials, are being published on our website in the next couple of weeks. So we're trying to get the word out, and everything's free. We're trying to help people begin to use these processes to improve their response to disruptions to critical infrastructure.
So help me understand this framework. The first ICS in the name there, the ICS4ICS name, the Incident Command System. I understand it's not something that was specifically built for responding to cybersecurity incidents, but maybe for incidents in general. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was actually developed in the 1970s, and it was developed in response to major fires that happened in the U.S., and many lives were lost, as well as a poor response. So they realized, as we also realized in cybersecurity incidents, that the major root cause of our failure in responding is that we're not managing ourselves well. And so this was developed. It's widely used by industries throughout the world. It's a perfect fit for industrial control system audience. So what we're doing is we're bringing together this incident command system people who already exist inside the company, along with the cybersecurity people who do computer incident response kind of activities, and combining them with the expertise of our industrial control system staff into one cohesive process so they can all work together to quickly respond and solve problems
And I'm curious. Do you think this would work outside of the ICS space? This framework, this approach to it.
Absolutely, yeah. So when we look at Colonial Pipeline, they really did not have an industrial control system problem. They had an enterprise IT problem, but the root cause of their failure to respond was a failure in managing themselves. Interestingly enough, they already had an incident command system. It works, and they just didn't use it for cybersecurity incidents. So what we're trying to do is to get people to use incident command to manage cybersecurity incidents, specifically for industrial applications, but it could really be used for anything, even if it was an enterprise IT, like in the Colonial case.
I think it's often easy to forget that a lot of the problems that we encounter in cybersecurity don't necessarily need to have cybersecurity specific solutions, right? Like in this case, it looks like, this incident command system framework worked. Like maybe you have to tweak it for cybersecurity, but you don't have to start from scratch. Other people have solved similar problems, especially given that you described the reason for this framework being created. You said we're not managing ourselves very well. So I'd like to dive a little deeper into that comment. So does that have to do with communication or the management of people and resources? What specifically were we not managing well that this helped fix?
All of the above. So I'll tell you, I'm an older man. 40 years ago, I used to be an operator in a data center back in the mainframe days, and we'd have a major problem. And I'd be sitting in front of a console, and 30 people would be standing behind me, yelling out orders: enter this, do that, do that, right? And that's what happens today. Is we have not a cohesive approach. And so what the incident command system brings to this is we have an organized decisions being made and executed. We don't have people just knee-jerk reaction. When you do that, you don't solve problems. You have to have well thought out solutions. And as you said, there's a lot of solutions out there, a lot of partners that we can use, mutual aid, as well as paid partners who can help us quickly solve problems. But you have to put those agreements in place in advance. And that's what ICS4ICS is designed to do, is ensure we have all the right players identified, contracts in place, and that we practice. It all comes down to practice, practice, practice.
I love to hear you say that, because I've been saying something similar for a while. I equate it to sports, like I was a PCI QSA, and I was a chief incident handler for a big chunk of my career. And oftentimes I go into these places as auditing for PCI, and what they're trying to pass off as their required annual incident response test is just so weak. That man, if you guys actually have an incident, everybody's just going to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They're not going to be. I think more than anything, what it gives you is kind of that emotional calm that you need. Some people have it come by it naturally, but nobody wants to reach for a 90-page incident response plan during the incident, right? Right.
You either practice and you know and understand what your role is. You understand what your supervisor is and who's making what decisions and how the processes work. The plan isn't actually going to be used during an actual incident, as you pointed out. You're not pulling out, and you say 90 pages. I've seen 450-page documents, and the person who developed them thinks you're going to pull those documents out. Not a chance in the world. There's some simple forms which come with the incident command system that allow us to fill out data, and we know who's filling out what section and who's making what decisions. That's the beauty of this, is you get action to an execution of your response quickly, because you know who's in charge, you know what your role is, and you're right. You either know or you're not. Your plan's worthless.
So let's zoom back out a little bit and talk more about the mission of the group, and I guess maybe also the future of the group, because it sounds like part of your mission is to help people prepare, but also it sounds like you're prepared to help them in real time with a response.
We assume that that the people will develop their capabilities and they'll develop mutual aid that makes sense for them. So we've got 1,000 people on our distribution list. Almost every industrial country has numerous people who are participating. And so they're really going to have to develop their capabilities. So we're doing this thing in Miami with S4. It'll be great. We'll have a video. Then we're going to move on to Australia, New Zealand. We've got Mexico lined up. We've got several people lined up to do their own exercise. And we're going to have to customize the materials a bit to match, right? So in Australia, they have an equivalent of DHS-CISA, but it's not the US they're going to refer to. So they'll make their own plan and we'll make some modifications. Same in Mexico, we'll have to translate to Spanish. So we're helping, we're facilitating, but ultimately they all need to do the work to make it work for their specific country, language and local government interactions, local business partners. All that has to be baked into the process so that it's successful. I'm not going to do them any good from the US. You know, if they have a problem in the US, we're a big country. I'm probably not going to do a whole lot of good unless it happens in my little small town, and that's not very unlikely.
Right. Yeah, coincidentally, that world tour, that list of places you mentioned, is basically my bucket list of places to take vacation to. So maybe I need to let me know if you need some help on that world tour.
They're all fabulous countries. I've been to all of them, and they're beautiful places to visit.
Katie, did you have a question?
I did have a couple questions. The first one is related to going to some of those wonderful places and, of course, the conferences. How do people get involved? You know, where do they find information? You know, some people might be afraid to join a new organization or test out a new thing. So what would people do to get involved, to learn more?
Sure, that's a great question. So we provided the links. I think Adrian has them. There's a link that shares information about ICS4ICS, the activities we're doing, how you can take the training, you can get credentialed, how you can volunteer to host an exercise in your country or industry sector. It has a lot of information out there that allows you to just look, and you can just sign up for the newsletter. So once a month you get a newsletter that tells you what's happening, what we're doing, and what the future of the program looks like. So we're just trying to share with people. Ultimately, you know, the actual people who do the work are the best people. And we've got sponsors in almost every country at this point who are going to put together and customize the process and host exercises. So we've got a lot of local boots on the ground all over the world.
Are there any requirements for getting involved? Do you have to have a certain job title, work at a certain type of company? Obviously, it has to be in ICS, but aside from that, any requirements that people should be aware of?
No requirements at all. We have a very mixed group of people. We have people that are industrial control systems people, a lot of them. We have cybersecurity people, and we also, of course, have some incident command staff. But anybody can join, some people from management. Anybody who wants to get on the list gets on the list, basically, and we'll share, and they're welcome to participate in shaping the future of the program, or they're welcome to just passively watch what's going on. Potentially they'll, you know, get an exercise somewhere near where they're located and potentially could go. The exercise is really, the proof is in the pudding. You know, we can put all the documents out there, and we've got training, and we've got a workshop online that you can go look at. But at the end of the day, the exercise really helps you understand the value of the program.
That's really important, you know, that anybody can get involved, and especially right now, as we're looking at potential increased activity against critical infrastructure. Are there any things that you're particularly concerned about right now as we're entering a really tense world situation? And, you know, we've seen in Ukraine in particular some attacks against their critical infrastructure. So does that change how you would approach any guidance, or is it more of a stay the course, laying the foundations?
We're staying the course, but we think that, you know, we're a big part of the solution. So DHS-CISA yesterday sent out emails to coordinators throughout the critical infrastructure industries in the United States. I'm sure other countries did the same thing. So oil companies were contacted, electrical, wastewater, water, all those people got an email, and they had a handful of things they said you need to be getting yourself ready for, because it's very likely if we do have escalation that we'll be under attack. The United States and most of the industrial world, anybody who boycotts a nation who is aggressive will be attacked. And they have great capability. So one of those handful of things they're telling you to do is check your incident command system processes, make sure you're ready to respond if you are attacked. So ICS4ICS is probably the solution for most industry companies.
Great, thank you.
Amazing stuff, Brian. And yes, we did come prepared with all the links. If you look at the show notes for today, securityweekly.com/ESW262, you will find those links to ICS4ICS, both the call for volunteers and the general website. And I also threw them out in our Discord channel, the same two links. So, yes, Brian, thanks so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today. I'm really interested to see the results of the April 18th test, and maybe we can have you back on to discuss the results.
That would be great. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back in a few moments with the weekly Enterprise News.
Imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, my listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack, but what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? Keeper Security's password management platform locks down logins, payment cards, and more in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. Sign up for a Keeper free trial today. Visit securityweekly.com/Keeper. Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself. Attackers are only getting more proficient, so how can you proactively adapt your cybersecurity strategy? Core Security by Help Systems helps you uncover and prioritize the risks that pose the biggest threat to your organization. Core Impact is a penetration testing tool that safely finds and exploits vulnerabilities using the same techniques as attackers. You can conduct advanced pen tests with ease using certified exploits and automations. Take your engagements to the next level by pairing with Cobalt Strike, a threat emulation tool ideal for adversary simulations and red team operations. Learn more at securityweekly.com/core security.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Don't miss any of your favorite Security Weekly content. Visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to any of our podcast feeds and have all new episodes downloaded right to your phone. You can also join our mailing list, Discord server, and follow us on social media and our streaming platforms. And now it's time for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW262 if you want to check out the show notes, the news stories that we're covering today. Today we've got 15 of them, and boy, we've got funding, and some acquisitions.
It's a lot of fun kind of week.
It is. It's interesting to watch how this changes week to week. Like some weeks we have, like I swear we had a bunch of acquisitions, like 5 acquisitions and maybe 1 or 2 fundings. And it just ebbs and flows, I guess.
Yeah, I was looking through the list that we had today, and it's what's crazy about it is it's like raises 3.25, raises 150, raises 100, 56, 38, 25, 20. I mean, it just occurred to me, you did a great job putting them in order of size. I never noticed that.
I always do that.
Oh, look at you. Your OCD kicks in, and it's got to be in the right order. I love it, Adrian.
It is. It's, yeah, I mean, I need things organized, so I'm not scrambling while we're doing the news, like I know where to find things.
Thank God we have, a co-host or a lead host like you. Because I would be the exact opposite. Shit would be everywhere. It'd be all confusing, and you wouldn't find anything.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So I've got a question for you and Katie. Are services becoming the new software? What is going on here with MDR and MSSPs? Are they functioning as software companies? Because, I got to imagine there's a lot of people behind these MDR services. Obviously they're not pen testing firms, but they're raising tons of money. Arctic Wolf, now eCentire, we're seeing these huge raises. And we're seeing them, investors treating them, it feels like software companies, like tech companies.
Yeah, but here's the catch on them. If you actually read that article, they raised $325 million in funding total, surpassing $100 million in revenue. If you had a good, strong, recurring revenue product,
it would be
SaaS
way more.
Product, $100 million, you'd be worth like $8 billion by this point.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. Yeah, but
I think it's a good way for software companies to merge themselves a little bit, because in a lot of cases, a software company will say, oh, really, it's really easy to deploy. It's really easy to use. And that's not necessarily the case. And you find a lot of end users who are scrambling. And these services are really necessary as a complement to that. And yeah, sorry, a little distracted here by a hungry cat.
What does Gus think?
Gus thinks that it's dinner time and there should always be servants, and so that is a service. He should always have someone at his beck and call. So he would be in favor of these software companies having services, and he wouldn't mind paying a premium either.
Managed cat feeding.
It's all about a couple things with the valuations, right? The compounding nature of revenue. And I'm sorry if you guys hear a little bit of a background noise. Somebody decided to start laundry in the room next to me, and that's the dryer, nice and loud.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem.
So sorry about that.
It's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's really
okay.
Not.
The compounding nature of the revenue streams of a SaaS software is where you get a lot of your multiple from. And so I think, when you're talking about a services-based model, it tends to be one and done. Now, if you could figure out how to create a recurring based services model, then that gets interesting. And if we read this eCentire article, they surpassed 100 million in annual recurring revenue, says the article, which is a little bit interesting if it is a bit of a services-based approach. So, it's going to be kind of neat to see how these valuations continue to ebb and flow. Obviously, I feel like we're at an extremely high peak right now in cyber valuations, when even companies like this are getting, decent sized multiples.
Yeah. I mean, I starting off, at least in my early years, I didn't recall really seeing services companies raising money at all. So that alone, the fact that they've got these big raises was interesting to me. Even like, for example, when we saw Bishop Fox do a raise with ForgePoint, it was to build a product. It wasn't to grow the services side. But I feel like most of this has been with MDR. Most of the raises that we've seen, maybe it's just anecdotal, but I feel like most of the big raises we've seen has been MDR focused.
Yeah, I'm going to throw something at you here, Adrian, because I don't feel like I know the MDR space well enough. Is MDR a service, or is it truly a service-enabled product, as Katie was kind of dancing around, meaning like managed detection and response? Is a lot of that a product that they've created that they can sell as a service that they maybe adapt with some additional humans, right? Is it kind of a hybrid?
I think a lot of folks have found that it's really hard to sell without the human component. And I'm not completely sure how to answer that question, but I can tell you what I've seen, and that's looking at. I looked at 8 or 9 XDR vendors, and they all have humans behind the scenes. And in some cases, they're not that behind the scenes. Like you can, if you have an incident, you can call them up, and they don't bill you additional for that. That's actually built into the product, and they don't call themselves an NDR. They call themselves XDR. So I've seen both sides of it, where it's presented as a product but has services behind it in some form or fashion, even if it's not billed that way, or they bill it as a service. And clearly, for a lot of these, they've got to either white label somebody else's product, or they've got to build their own tooling to be able to do it.
At the end of the day, it comes down to the margins, right? If you can create a system, a software package that has 80 to 90% margins, you're going to have a higher multiple versus a service, which is going to have 20, 30, 40% margins, right? And so what I think you're probably seeing is a lot of these MDRs maybe 30, 40% when they start, but they start automating, innovating, creating technologies themselves. And it becomes a 40, 50, 60, even 70% margin. And when you start to get that high, you can get a real good multiple.
Yeah, and really it's the build versus buy. Some of these companies, versus going out and acquiring tools, will build their own, so they're purpose built for their clientele. And then you've got the influx of customers who may need help because of the real or perceived talent shortage, because of the increase in cyber attacks, cyber activity, digital transformation. There's just a lot more going on. And so I think that all probably contributes to this interest in bolstering they're almost like hybrid companies, because they're not pure services companies, they're not platform companies, like Tyler just said. So it's almost this hybrid that serves dual purpose.
Yeah, I agree. Hybrid, I think, is a good term for it, even though it does tend to be somewhat overused for different things in the industry. I think it's accurate. Like what do you do if you can't hire detection engineers because Datadog, and Jimmy hired them all and took them all?
Right. If you're a vendor, you're paying a premium. If you're an end user, you're losing out good candidates to vendors. Right.
Yeah, very interesting market to watch, and interesting because CRA has actually acquired a company. So this story is actually from MSSP Alert, which is now part of Cyber Risk Alliance, and they're going to start up a show that's entirely focused on managed security. It's going to be called Managed Security Weekly, and that's how big this industry is that there's enough to make a whole separate podcast on it. All right, so moving on, I'm not even sure if check really belongs in here. They're calling it cybersecurity, but that's always been a point of contention with me, companies in the fraud space, if they really belong in the security space, because the fraud space is, I feel like, probably just as big as cybersecurity, and I'm not terribly familiar with it. A lot of it tends to be less technology focused, more process focused. Or I mean, some of it's technology focused, but the security team, right? Security team is generally not the buyers for this kind of product.
Well, it depends, right? So I think they've got web fraud, ad fraud, payment fraud. There's all sorts of different fraud. My brief review of check, which I know very little about, basically on the skim of the article here, is that it's ad fraud centered around making sure that it's human beings that are checking the ads and not the bots. I think that's a cybersecurity play compared to, say, like fraud, like financial fraud, transaction-based financial fraud for financial backends and transfers and things like that, which, sure, that's cybersecurity in some sense, but it's more bank security, traditional bank security. So in this particular case, I do think the ad fraud space is interesting. I don't know anything really about their company short of what was in the article, but one thing that caught my eye when I did read the article is that they said we are a category leader with revenue in the tens of millions of dollars, and we're getting $1 billion valuation, which is like, hey, all right, tens of millions, it's all it takes these days, and it's probably low tens at that. But they are at 200 employees and growing to 350 this year, 120 people based in Israel, and they're looking to grow that Israeli presence to over 200. So, it did take a little longer. This also caught my eye. They started the process for fundraising in October, and just closed it 10 days ago. So October through February, 4 months. Not a super long time, but it certainly wasn't a hyper aggressive round where we're seeing preemptive rounds in many, many cases where people don't even start a formal process for a raise. They literally just have investors beating down their doors constantly until they give up and allow them to buy a piece of the company. That's happening more often than not these days.
Yeah, I love this article. It's like the most honest and open fundraising press release I've ever seen. Like there's the quote in here from one of the founders. 150 million is still an unimaginable sum for me. Well, I hope you can imagine it pretty quickly, because you just got
you're about to open your bank account and see the zeros at the end of the number.
Yeah, and you got to turn those zeros into growth.
Yeah, and that's true. I remember when I was involved in an early funding round, 6, 8, 10 years ago, whatever it was. And it was kind of the first time it was like, you open up a bank account and see that many zeros. And literally, I mean, it's a bank account that you're the administrator of. Like, you can pull the money out, do whatever the hell you want with it. Obviously, there's fiduciary commitments that you have to
Well, they probably have a fraud department that is not the same as this fraud department that checks against that.
They might, but it is weird to open up, and you have your Silicon Valley Bank app on your phone. You open it up and you see all these zeros, and you're like, "Holy smokes!"
So yeah, I kind of tangentially know what happens when you do stuff with that money that your investors don't approve of. But that's a different story for another time, not on air.
It does not end well. It does not end well, Adrian.
It didn't. It did not end very well. Moving on, Beyond Identity also becomes a unicorn. We got to be close to 50 at this point. I think we started the year with like 41, 42, and we've had, I think, at least one unicorn almost every episode since. So I'm thinking we're nearing 50 unicorns.
But we got to be higher than that. We got 4 or 5 this week alone.
Yeah, maybe. I haven't gone back and counted them yet. Yeah, I think it was CB Insights that has the really good list of all the unicorns. So I'll have to check that. But Beyond Identity is building out an MFA product. So, that's part of what this funding is going to be used for. It's going to be R&D, and then part of it is just for expansion into other regions. They're fairly mature at this point. This is Series C. Brings their total to $205 million. And this has been a big topic. Actually, not MFA for employee or customer or user-facing stuff, but more for administrative stuff. This is a conversation I saw going on in one of the Slacks I was in recently, and just talking about how big of a challenge it is to do for administrators. It's a bit of a different problem to solve there, and I think Beyond Identity plays a little bit in that space.
Yeah, the other thing that caught my eye on this one is invisible multi-factor authentication, right? It's not just pure MFA, it's IMFA, I guess, if you want to use a cheesy term for it, but cryptographically binding user identities to their devices and eliminating passwords. Once again, and we've had this conversation on the show multiple times.
They're talking about certs.
Right, is finding ways to get rid of passwords, period, full stop, across the board. Not just making it easier to remember the damn things, but getting rid of them. In this particular case, it's targeted toward, administrative communications and things like that. But at the end of the day, those used to be passwords as well. So anytime that we can get rid of those credentials, I think we're going to be better off. So it's pretty exciting. And if you skim to the bottom of this article, Adrian, there are nearly 60 cybersecurity unicorns, and more than half achieved this status in 2021, according to this article.
Yeah, maybe they're counting unicorns a little different. So we had that issue with CB Insights where I think they leaned further on the fraud side than we would on how they counted unicorns. So gotcha. That's interesting in itself. Is that we don't even have the same count of unicorns because we can't even agree, what's cybersecurity and what's not, and where that line is drawn.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, our count is right, their count is wrong. It's that simple.
Yeah, we'll see how that ends up. I don't know how 60 unicorns exit or have happy exits. I mean, they're all going to exit.
Didn't we previously discuss what's the herd of a unicorn? Is it herds of unicorns? Is that what they are? Is that what we decided?
A
collection of unicorns is known as a what?
A yard?
A yard of unicorns.
Is that correct?
If that is correct, there we go. That's the start to the yard of unicorns that we're collecting here at Enterprise Security Weekly.
A blessing. No, it's called a blessing.
Oh, it's a blessing. That sounds right. Yeah, it's definitely a blessing. Okay. Yeah, man, this blessing is getting big. It's a blessing that we're seeing the blessing. And the question is, where does the blessing exit? How do we exit a true blessing of unicorns? I think that's worthy of like a blog post.
Yeah. Bless their hearts. Had to. Appropriate.
Had to be done.
All right. So we've got a couple here. 4 and 6 are both companies that automate really irritating, just grindstone compliance work. SOC 2s. Like I'm constantly hearing people talk about, working on their SOC 2. And HIP as well. So Secure Frame raised $56 million, and they've got a platform that automates at least some of this. I haven't really been able to look at these very close, but yeah, even back when I was doing PCI, when I was a PCI QSA, I could think of tons and tons of stuff you could do to automate the kind of stuff that I would ask people for, like samples. Like as auditors, we do samplings, like take a screenshot of this, show me some logs from this, show me where you've done this. Almost, I think I even did a project once where, I looked at how much of PCI, of the 300 plus requirements in the PCI DSS standard, could be automated. And it was something like 80% of it. It was a lot. And nobody was doing that. So I can totally see how you could make a ton of money by saving tons of time for companies that have to get a SOC 2 or high tech or HIPAA compliance or, some of the stuff.
It's an incredible burden, and so much of it is still done manually. So this is anything that can help is great. I am, because I don't know these companies, I am interested in how this works and how much can actually be automated versus it's just a little bit more of a guidance tool, like a wizard to walk companies through it. Because in the past, we've seen tools that have claimed to help with compliance and automation, help automate compliance. And it just ends up being more like a wizard, a guided tool to help people answer the questions that they need to answer. But it is a big problem because there's a huge and growing number of requirements that companies need. It also helps them when it comes to audit time, if they have everything in one place. It's an interesting space, and I'd love to learn more about this because I do think especially bigger companies have so many requirements to satisfy, and they have huge teams spending significant effort on it.
So here's my hot take on compliance. Compliance is stupid. It should never be done in isolation. Compliance is an outcome of continuous, strong cybersecurity program. And if you approach your cybersecurity program in a way where you're collecting information, automating the collection of the information, automating the comparisons and gaps against compliance, you will know at all times whether you're compliant or not. That's how compliance needs to occur. And I think a lot of compliance tools approach it as a checkbox, and it's just not the right way to do it.
Yeah, well, I totally. I think the issue, though, is that people get so caught up and there's so much money in and there's so much focus on, at least a few times a year, managing these audits that companies don't really need to, they don't really know what to do and they don't know how to manage it. Yes, compliance should be an outcome of good security, but for so many companies, it's still the focus because of, because it's so big, because they don't have enough people, because they don't know what they're managing, because of, conflicting requirements in compliance. It's that is the utopia, I think, what you just laid out there. But I think in reality, for so many companies, the reality is much more complex. Maybe it doesn't need to be, but so many companies haven't moved past either that checkbox mentality or that manual management.
Yeah, that's exactly the problem. A lot of companies just haven't figured out how to get there. Whether it be process, people, technology, whatever it is, they haven't figured out how to make security be the driver of compliance and not the other way around. Because when you look at compliance and just say, oh, it would be wonderful if we could get our SOC 2. Well, yeah, it would be. That's great. But the right way to get SOC 2 is to be secure, not to just check all the boxes for a point in time and come back 12 months later and check it again. So, yes, I think it's a utopian view. I think it's the right way to do it, and I would love to continue to drive that into the collective consciousness of CISOs and security engineers out there. Is do security the right way, and compliance becomes the outcome.
Well, and I mean, there's a lot of additional stuff there that you have to do for compliance, like for SOC 2s. Like if somebody's not available, to be interviewed, by the auditor, you got to push that off to the next week. There's a lot of requirements that maybe don't apply to your environment, so you have to spend time putting together the rationale for why you don't have to comply with this, or you have to. I'm trying to remember what we called them in PCI. They're doing away with them now. Compensating controls. Yeah, so that, and it depends on the requirements. Some get very prescriptive, and you have to do more of that than others. And some of them, like PCI is completely pass fail. Like you've got to pass all 300 requirements, whereas NIST CSF and ISO, aren't really pass fail. That it's more of a fluid thing. So it's totally depends on the business and the compliance framework.
Tyler really just wants a checkbox that says, "This is stupid. I don't comply."
Exactly. That's exactly.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying it's not stupid. Certainly parts of it are stupid. I think in many cases it is necessary. And the clients I've had, like that's the kind of auditor I tried to be. It was the guy that gave you 2 answers to any question about compliance. I said, I'd give you the answer. Here's what you need to do to check the box. And here's what you should be doing. And sometimes those were the same thing, but often not. All right. So I found out, putting together the news today, that there's a cybersecurity company over in Nashville that I had never heard of before, Phosphorus Cybersecurity. Raised cool. $38 million to secure IoT devices. Had you ever heard of these guys? Either
Can't
of you?
say that I have, but there's a lot of them that I haven't heard of. I'm curious how you secure an IoT device any different than you secure anything else, though.
Most of the IoT security stuff I've seen is stuff that you bake in when you build it.
Yep. Almost has to be, right?
Yeah, not a whole lot of bolt-on, but because IoT it tends to be so unique, it would be hard to bolt on stuff after the fact. But don't know a ton about it, but interesting to see that just a few less than 200 miles down the road from me, somebody raised a $38 million Series A. It's a big Series A too.
Yeah, and I can tell you how they got it too, because Chris Ruland is the founder and CEO of Phosphorus Cybersecurity. I did not realize he lived in Nashville now. Did you say Nashville, by the way?
Nashville, yes.
Yeah. He used to live in Atlanta. He is one of the original founders, I believe, of ISS Security, if you can harken back to the late 90s. Early 2000s. Chris Ruland was a founder in that. He also did a company called Bastille Networks. And then he did another one after that. He was hooked up with a couple of companies I circled for a while. He raised a big A because he's Chris Ruland. He's been there. He's done that. He's been around the block. He was part of X-Force early on. Smart guy, very smart guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what he builds out of this. And I would highly recommend you connect with him in Nashville, Adrian. Okay. And I'm happy to make the introduction too, if it makes sense.
Sure. And it looks like it's an asset management solution.
Uh-oh. Coming at us, Katie.
Dun, dun, dun. Yeah, but it's just IoT. It's okay.
Their flagship solution, Phosphorus Enterprise, provides users with a complete inventory of IoT devices throughout their environment, showing the IP address, manufacturer, model, and firmware, so they have more transparency over security posture.
That's great. We definitely need more inputs into total comprehensive asset management. Great.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Sounds like they're more like a Rumble. Sounds like they're more like a Rumble.
Yeah. Yeah, except focused on IoT devices, whereas Rumble is targeting everything. Which is
but I guess what I'm getting at by that is Rumble is more IP centric internal. They are now branching rapidly into more cloud centric. They're getting more diverse, but they were primarily IT IP centric. Where it sounds like this is something similar.
Yeah, and once you get to the firmware level, things get sticky. And I think that's where the vulnerability, the big three, the QRTs of the vulnerability management space really need somebody to build a solution that can both discover and categorize and understand IoT solutions down to the version of firmware running on them and exactly what make and model they are, because they can't do it at all. It's in my testing, it's terrible. They're like, it's embedded Linux. Could be anything. We don't know. So.
Yeah, I don't know much about this company, but there's a great firm out there, Eclipsium, that does discovery down to the firmware.
Yeah, we've had them on the show quite a bit. There's some good folks over at Eclipse.
Yeah, really good company, smart folks. I used to work with them at my last job and was always really impressed with what they built and what they research. And but it is a nascent space for sure, and definitely could use some good players. Sorry, folks at Eclipsium, don't mean to suggest you have competition, but it's an important space.
Yeah, I mean, just the discovery piece. What is this IoT device? What's the state of it? Nobody's doing a great job of that at this point that can do it across all devices on an enterprise, because you literally have to build. You'd have to build parsers, for each type of IoT device out there. I just don't see any other way around it. But you need some kind of signature or some way to fingerprint those devices. Yep. So somebody's going to have to build a huge database that's going to constantly grow on a daily basis.
Eclipsium used to be, or was at one point I believe a sponsor of the show, because I remember seeing their ads floating around. But I actually tried to spin up a company. I might have even pitched you on this about 9 years ago, of doing exactly that massive fingerprinting database for IP-centric devices. Remember, but I was doing more home related, but we can set that aside. But it's interesting to see how these markets come and go over the course of a decade.
Yeah. All right, what else do we have here? Might not touch on all the funding raises here. There's some interesting acquisitions. Cloudflare bought Area 1 Security for $162 million, which I've got to imagine is is not a great exit for Area 1. Area 1's been around for a while, but I mean, that's the size of some of the Series C's and D's that we're seeing, but that's the acquisition price. Area 1 is interesting. Like, they really focused on phishing.
That's a 2x on money invested. They have $82.5 million invested, 160 out, so it's a 2x on money invested, so not a very successful exit.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're focused kind of more on the email side, but they were kind of competing with the risk IQs. Like, they would help you do takedowns. They would look for evidence that somebody was setting up a phishing campaign to target your company, or somebody already had, and you'd want to do a takedown of that domain, like some misspelling of capital1.com or something like that is an example here. And yeah, I just didn't hear a ton from them for the last 5 to 7 years. I'm not sure what they were up to, but they just kind of dropped off my radar for a while.
Yep, I got nothing there, buddy. I never really knew them.
Yep. All right, moving on. Let's see. Darktrace picked up an attack surface management company. I've got a list of almost over 24, probably close to 30 companies in the attack surface management space, and I've never heard of Cybersprint. I'm thinking maybe it's because I think they're based in the UK. That could explain some of it, or definitely no, the
may
Netherlands.
Not be marketing to the US. Yeah, they may not be marketing to the US, focused on Europe.
I mean, I don't focus on just the US, but sometimes the channels where I look for companies, where I look to discover companies, like, it's not the US Google that's giving me the right results and stuff like that. Yep. So I do miss stuff. But yeah, interesting that we've seen a decent amount of acquisition in the space. Jonathan Crane's company, Intrigue, got picked up by Mandiant. Obviously, Palo Alto picked up that company that has the same name as the Amazon Prime TV show. Blanking on it.
I can't even help you. I don't know what you're talking about.
Expanse.
Oh, yeah, Expanse, right.
It was definitely an SEO battle to look for that company. Yeah, we've seen a couple in this area. Some of the bigger ones haven't been picked up yet. They've been turning down acquisition offers. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see, because this is attack surface management is one of those areas where it can provide value for a whole bunch of companies. I don't think vulnerability management vendors are going to necessarily be the buyers here, but all kinds of companies that are kind of tangential to vulnerability management, I think will be picking up these companies. Let's see. And Sneak expands into cloud security. They're already doing some stuff in cloud security, but they're expanding more into there with a pickup of Fugue. And I don't know a ton about Fugue, but
it's a cloud
CSPM?
cloud security kind of CSPM-ish play, for lack of a better term. More app centric, I think. So maybe dabbling in a bit of the web protection platform / CNAPP space, but certainly providing infrastructure as code security, cloud compliance type coverage. It's an interesting space, but that space is commoditizing like crazy, and you're up against some monster players like Prisma and now Wiz and Orca, and it's tough to be competitive in that cloud protection side of the house.
Yeah, they're skewing it as infrastructure as code, which is certainly important, but it does, beg the question about where this space is going, because CSPM is becoming a little amorphous at this point, I think, and it's
a consolidation of a bunch of things, right?
Right.
Well, maybe. I'll counterpoint you on that one. I don't think it's necessarily consolidation of a bunch of things as so much CSPM is the foundation of a lot of cloud native security tools and markets. So it is kind of the underpinning of a bunch of things as opposed to consolidating a bunch of things together. And I think what you'll see is CSPM, in my opinion, instead of being the collector, just because it's part of everything, just kind of ceases to exist in isolation of itself. And you'll see the markets that have it as its base offer CSPM plus something, right? I think that's the direction it goes for me.
I think it's a little like SASE, where different companies, different people define it a little bit differently depending on what they offer, who they're partnered with, who they acquire, etc. And it changes a little bit depending on whom you're talking to.
I'd been looking at it kind of like a SASE, where it was a combination of different things, where it was, like the, scanning infrastructure as code for security issues, I just saw as just like one feature of a platform like this. Like most of the CSPMs I've seen have some kind of runtime agent, that's gathering information, or could even do enforcement, configuration changes, stuff like that. Monitoring, guardrails, that kind of stuff, I've seen as pieces of CSPMs. So I had been thinking of it as just a collection of a bunch of products that started life as features and got consolidated. But, maybe, I don't know, maybe it's because I've been too exposed to some vendors in this space and not enough to others. And it's gotten muddled in my head.
It's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch how the CSPM battle really plays out. But yeah, definitely would love to chat more over a beer with that one with you, Adrian.
Yeah, and I clearly want to take a deeper dive into some of these areas that is something I've traditionally done on the show. Like when we have an interview that doesn't show up, like somebody has a family emergency or something, I try and have some of these deep dives into some of these areas that come up often, but maybe we don't understand real well. I'd like to have maybe a segment just on CSPM to make sure that we understand what's going on in that space.
Absolutely.
All right, almost done here. Definitely want to mention this hot take by Andy Ellis. I don't know if either of you have had a chance to read it. Before I share my thoughts on it, though, because I've actually discussed it with him, I'd like to hear your thoughts if you had a chance to read it.
So I will tell you, I think I know what it says. I have not read it in depth, though, so I'd love to hear the TLDR before I give opinion.
Yeah, you want to make sure you hit the last three paragraphs because it's either that or hit the subtitle, because that was the bit that I missed. When I read this first, I thought it was more general, like just SBOM is dumb, like the way you were talking about compliance earlier. But it's then I realized, no, he's specifically talking about the service where you provide the SBOM externally to third parties.
Yep. And is the thought process there that it adds too much risk? Is that the TLDR, that it adds too much risk to be publicly telling what your SBOM is?
No, and so one issue I had with him is I feel like he's talking about SBOM as if you can only do it at a high level of precision. Like, here's the exact library we're using, like the exact version of it, and the version just changed, versus just saying, hey, we use this library in general, and then you don't have to update the SBOM as often. But no, I think it was more of a juice is not worth the squeeze argument here.
That's a hot take for sure. And it's a hot take I don't necessarily know I agree with, because to me, if we can put automation around SBOM collection and correlation and have it automatically create and automatically update, who cares? Have it automatically happen. Why is that squeeze too hard?
I think it comes down to the subtleties of it and how deep we do go. I mean, I think the idea of an SBOM is really important, but to a certain degree, I really agree with him here, because, if you were to look at adjacent industries, a lot of people saying, SBOM is just like a recipe list. Well, it's not. It's not saying I bake a cake and it has sugar, flour, eggs, whatever you would put in a cake. It's not that high level. It's, where did my flour come from? Was it produced in a factory that also contained nuts, things like that? And you get a really complex when you dive into ingredients, if we're comparing it to this recipe idea. For instance, I have a couple of friends who are celiac. I was really unaware before I met these people that things like soy sauce can have gluten or not have gluten, depending on what kind of soy sauce it is. Also, depending on where it's made and how it's made. And so it gets very complicated very quickly. And so if you take that analogy of not all soy sauce is created the same, and not even, if you have the light soy sauce versus the low sodium soy sauce versus, I don't even know, there are tons of different types of soy sauce. Yeah, there's
dark soy sauce, yeah.
Exactly. It starts to get very complicated very quickly. So if you have that high level of, we have soy sauce, that's great, but that precipitates so many other questions that could still leave the risk open if we're talking at supply chain.
Yeah, so I will say I previously worked at a software composition analysis company where their whole job was to look at components. It was a company that did exactly this. There are automated tools that can generate your SBOM right from your software composition analysis tooling, automatically pull out the SBOM, and it does transitive risk and transitive SBOM analysis. So if you pull in library X and library X makes a call or has library Y and Z in it, that transitive nature can be logged within your SBOM. Can be done fully automated in a fully automated way. And they even have a format structure called Cyclone DX, which is an output model of, it's like a SBOM as code, you could almost call it, where you can ingest the Cyclone DX format and act from it. So to me, and I love Andy. Andy's a brilliant guy, and I love that he puts out controversial topics because I think it opens up and spearheads debate in a healthy way. But I think this is when I'd sit down and drink a beer with him on, because to me, I think automation of SBOM creation is entirely feasible. And then if customers say, hey, what about X? What about Y? Give them the Cyclone DX output, let them ingest it into their risk engine and make calls that they want to make on the output that you have. It can be fully automated. So I don't see it as a negative. Now, all that being said, I haven't read this article in depth, so maybe there's some nuance in there I'm not getting. But I would take the counterpoint on this one for sure.
So two thoughts here, and we can move on. But my first thought being, I think it can be simpler and still have value. I don't think the SBOM needs to necessarily include precise versioning. Every time a change is made, the provenance, where and how you installed it, and where from. I think even the most basic SBOM, can have value and be useful. So that's kind of one thing. I feel like he's kind of set up as a straw man here that Like he uses the most complex example and says, see, it's just not worth the work. And I'm like, well, if you were to simplify all that stuff and make it easy and do it fully automated, like what you're saying, Tyler, I think like it wouldn't destroy all the value. Sure, I get what you're saying in some cases. Like, and my other thought, to play devil's advocate with my own opinion here, when that UA parser JS NPM package got hacked, you were only vulnerable to it if you installed it from NPM, because the malware that got installed through the installer script. So if your CI/CD was pulling that from GitHub and not installing it from NPM, you would have been fine, because that installer script only lived at NPM.
Yeah.
So the malicious piece wasn't in the library. Sure. Yeah. I have a good guest that we can bring on around this topic for a future date. I'll look to bring him on, because I think this is a super fun topic that we can deep dive. Absolutely. And speaking of SBOM, the U.S. Cybersecurity Agency, CISA, is, and I say speaking of SBOM just because the executive order had SBOMs in it, and so seeing lots of references to SBOMs in federal stuff now. But yeah, they released a list of free cybersecurity services and tools, which is kind of refreshing coming from the government. So I like this kind of stuff, seeing this kind of stuff.
Big fan. Free is generally never free, but when it is truly free, that would be wonderful. Usually it comes with some kind of cost, human cost, resource cost, usually something.
My favorite saying is free as piano, not free as beer.
Exactly.
Like somebody gives you a free piano, you're like, where the hell am I going to put that? Who's going to move it? Who's going to take it up the stairs? Who's going to take it down your stairs? Like somebody's going to die moving this thing, but it's free.
Exactly.
Whereas a beer, like you just drink the beer. That's truly free. Or
I'll find out a way. Honestly, if somebody gave me a free piano, I'd figure out a way to get it home.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and me too, because I actually just got rid of one, after selling our house. But we almost died moving it. But I just don't have room for it.
You can hire piano movers.
Yes, you can. And that's what I did the second time I moved it. I did hire piano movers.
Right, and they're probably not as expensive as security engineers.
They are not. And for our squirrel story today, bringing it close to home for Mr. Tyler Shields here, I actually enjoyed this. So Jupyter One has a version of Wordle that has a cybersecurity and IT specific dictionary behind it, which completely changes how you play the game. I found out. Like, no more are you just looking for stuff that helps you with the English language. That doesn't help you anymore. Like, whatever strategy you have for Wordle doesn't work when you change the dictionary to something that could have acronyms in it or abbreviations in it. So I actually I appreciated that, Tyler.
Like that. No, I didn't. I hated it. You took up way too much of my time, and I only had to use 3 guesses to get it. But it took me so much longer than it should have, and so I hate it.
Which word did you do? There's a new word every single day.
I can't tell you. What if somebody's going on and playing today?
Well, they can't because it's from the other day. It's gone.
It's from the historical words.
You can say it's
gone.
It
was cloud. That should have been like...
Oh, you see, you just ruined it. That's today's.
Yeah, no, Adrian, it was not.
It's today's.
It took me at least a good 15 minutes to figure it out, and so I hate your game. I hate it.
You know which one really irked me, Adrian? The one that just had me fuming is ASCII.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I got it in one try. I got today's in one try.
Oh, yeah, of course you did, because KT just gave you the word.
See, I told you, but you guys made me say it. I could at least see where ASCII would drive you nuts, but cloud, really, it should have been there, and it wasn't, and so your game sucks.
So I will tell all the people on the stream, live show that are seeing this, definitely click on the ESW show notes, or you can go to twitter.com/TXS. I think my most recent tweet is a link to the Wordle game, and you can find it through there.
Are you allowed to use Wordle in your promotion?
We are not. It's actually called the Cybersecurity Word Game.
There you go. Just making sure, for compliance.
That was me saying it. I'm the only one that said Wordle.
No, I said it. Shh, don't tell anybody. My legal team, we actually had to debate with the legal team what words we could actually use to market it.
Oh yeah, yeah, it's probably smart.
So
it's
there's
probably now that the New York Times owns it.
Exactly, there were very specifically crafted terms that we use on the landing page for that reason.
Nice. Yeah, I did notice that cybersecurity word game. I was like, you guys are really trying to not say Wordle.
Correct. Yes, I do not use that Wordle.
Yeah. The first one I did was Q, and it took me all 6 tries. QUEUE.
I'm not going to lie. The first 3 I tried, I failed at all 3. I didn't get it.
Oh, wow.
That's probably because I'm stupid. That's a whole other problem.
Well, I tried with cyber, then I tried with asset. But it took me 15 minutes. The whole thing. It was a nightmare. You wasted 15 minutes of my time, Mr. Tyler Shields.
My entire goal in life is to waste your time, Katie.
Oh, man, that is strategic. That is straight up strategic.
Pure strategery.
All right. Thanks so much, Katie and Tyler, for joining me today. Big thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Y'all are the best. Don't let anybody tell you different.